And welcome back to the Remake Tuesday. My name is Ruben and this is my review for Netflix's original series, The Brave Ones. Set in modern day South Africa, the captivating supernatural series is inspired by the rich mythology of African gods and divine beings. It tells the story of Tsitski, a goddess reincarnated as a human being to avenge her sister's death. But first, she must learn how to use and harness her powers in order to defeat her enemies and save her family from destruction. So thankfully, this series is only 5 episodes, and I say thankfully because I want to kind of get the negatives out of the way first. It outstays its welcome 100%. All scenes are very slow, and there's a lot of moments that you just didn't need in the series. In fact, there are the first hour and a half of the 2 first episodes, there's a lot of content in there that they could have sped up to get to the part where we're seeing our character inherit her powers, then having to learn how to deal with her powers, then having to beat the bad guys. Like, it's all wrapped up in the synopsis, and it takes far too long setting up the world. There is a moment where our character also has lost, as mentioned in the synopsis, her sister, and then goes out on a date later that night, or like a few hours later, and she's smiling and happy, and I just didn't like the writing in some of the parts. I thought the dialogue wasn't accurate to how the characters would react. It just didn't feel right. It felt disingenuous. I felt like they either needed to spend more time with the character grieving and the family. Not that that's fun to watch people grieving, but they needed to show time passing before they continued the story. But what is written into the story as a sort of time reference of frame for things to happen in the story, stuff is happening in their local village, and so they keep pressing forward the storyline. So they've written it so they've got to be quick, but at the same time it felt disingenuous then to have a relationship and go on a date. That none of that made sense to me, and I just didn't like that bit. There are moments like this in the series where I just thought, I don't like the characters. Now for me that's really hard to say because I love everything South African, because I was born in South Africa, spent the first 16 years of my life there, and have a lot of fond memories. In fact, some of the shots you see I grew up on those streets, seeing Johannesburg or Ponty or the Tower, you know, I was like, wow, that's a very different Johannesburg to what I remember, because it's all kind of now upmarket and doing well, I see, which is awesome. A couple of weeks ago we had a fantastic series called Ludwig, which was amazingly acted, well scripted, had good pacing, and was one of the best seasons of TV, let alone South African shows, originals. And so sometimes there is great content, but this time round I found it really difficult to get into the characters, although I really wanted to. Okay, so those are all the negatives. You're like, Ruben, wow, you really hated this. I didn't hate it, but there were parts that were really, really annoying, and I just wanted to get past that kind of beginning stump before we got into the kind of supernatural stuff, seeing what our character would do. And it's interesting that they only made it 5, because normally Netflix will make a series 6 for the first season, and if it does well, then they'll say, yeah, sure, here's a budget for 8 or 10 episodes depending on how well it's received. But 5 means they didn't have enough story, and it gives you an idea that they were still stringing out those episodes as we went along. It could have been probably a 2.5-hour movie, like an original setting up maybe a series, to see how well that would have been received. I think the pacing and editing would have worked much better, because the story and lore in there is great. The costume design is excellent. Most of the filmmaking is good, but I think there's some trouble in editing. There's stuff that just was edited incorrectly, and you're like, Ruben, what do you know? Well, I know a bit. I've been in film and TV for a bit, and there's just, for an example, there's one scene where there's an action sequence shot of a guy that gets stabbed, and before that the sequence of events doesn't relate to the cut that you see on the screen. So some person jumps over it on the table, and then the body is in absolute opposite direction as to what he should, or where he should be facing. And I don't know if they thought, well, we're too slow, we're not going to catch things like that, but it was so obvious that I was just like, whoa, what's happening there? So for the most part, the series itself is well acted, and with the dialogue they're given is coming across as genuine family moments. I really like the family unit. I believe them, love the costume design, like the cinematography, like the look and feel, and the pacing when there was pacing there, and the action sequences for the most part were okay, not great. The special effects needed more budget. I did enjoy what was at the core and heart of the story, the supernatural story. There's a lot of rich culture to take from the supernatural story there and really kind of grow on that. Now, if we get a second season, I'm really hoping that they kind of delve more into that and they sort out the pacing issues, because for the most part, this was enjoyable. But I can't tell you to stick this on your watch list, because I don't know if Everybody will enjoy this. Probably if you are from South Africa, you're going to find enjoyment out of this, and there'll be places where you've been to outside of that. If you're coming from into South Africa and this is the first time and you've been immersed into this new culture, there are things that are really fun to watch, but there are things that you're going to find really painful. I'm going to give this 2.75 Nicolas Cages out of 5. Let me know your rating once you've seen it. Are you excited for this? I don't think I've been too harsh. Once you've seen it, you'll understand what this series is. I hope you hear my heart. I've got to be honest with this. Thanks so much for watching, but most of all, until next time, remember, live long and Tuesday.